Civil rights group Egalitarian Mission for Africa, EMA, has dragged the Economic Community of West African States, Ecowas, to the bloc's court over the proposed military intervention in Niger Republic. The group asked the court to invoke ECOWAS protocols to stop the planned military action against Niger. The suit was instituted by a Nigerian lawyer, Kayode Ajulo. According to the suit marked ECW CCJ APP 323, ECOWAS treaties prohibits aggression among member states. The group wants the regional courts to invoke relevant ECOWAS treaties and international laws to stop the military invasion of Niger. It said any military intervention in Niger would be tantamount to aggression between ECOWAS member states, stressing that the planned military invasion would run foul of the obligations of the ECOWAS treaties. Apart from EMA, other plaintiffs in the suit are a former Director General of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, Bola Akinteriwa, and Hamza Dantani, a lawyer. And now move on to our second interview for the day as we discuss Dr. Vwaere Diaso, who died in an elevator accident at the Lagos General Hospital on Tuesday, August 1, and has been laid to rest. In the meantime, Lagos State government has provided details on the elevator accident that killed Dr. Vwaere Diaso at the General Hospital Odon, Lagos Island, last Tuesday. In a statement released on Sunday and signed by the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Information and Strategy, Olumide Shogunle, the details were contained in the outcome of a panel of inquiry set up to look into the possible causes of the incident. The panel, according to Shogunle, disclosed that the elevator plunged down the building at exactly 6:50 p.m., adding that the impact damaged its doors, which needed to be forced open. He revealed that the deceased victim was extracted an hour later, while resuscitation commenced immediately. The membership of the panel included representatives of the Medical Guild and 6 representatives of House officers. The panel has now concluded its deliberations and submitted its report. Joining us now is Dr. Joy Alfuobhokhan, a medical officer. Good morning, Dr. Joy, and thank you for coming to speak to us this morning.
Good morning.
Dr. Joy, first our condolences on the unfortunate and avoidable passing of your colleague. As they say in Nigeria failed her. But I understand you live in the same doctor's quarters where the lift dropped and became a vehicle of death. Now, tell us about, that lift, that elevator, because there are stories that everyone living in that building had been complaining that something was wrong with that elevator. What has been your experience so far? And what's your general comment about Dr. Diaso?
Okay, so thank you very much for having me. I and Vwaere went to medical school together, actually, Babcock University. We're classmates, and I got to work some months before her. So we're friends, we're classmates, and we got to work in the same facility. As at the time I started working at General Hospital Odon, the lift was non-functional. It wasn't working at all. And this is a building with 10 floors. So house officers were made to walk. So you come back from work, let's say you walk throughout the day and probably were on call most part of the night. You would have to walk several floors to get to your room, walk several floors to come downstairs to get amenities and all of that. And there was also a light and water issue. So we were made to carry buckets of water through those floors all the way down. And this was what necessitated our repeated complaints that the lift had to be functional. So as at the time I started working there, about 2 months afterward, we saw that some repairs started to go on, and there are 2 elevators. However, only one of them was some repairs being done on. We came and then they set it up, and then it started to work. But as at the time it started to work, few days after this, it started to, so you get in and then it would take you to a floor and it would just stop there. So we immediately raised alarm about this and told them that this, whatever has been done here, wasn't done properly, or the right mechanisms were not put in place. So this lift is not working. And this has been a complaint that has been done over time, over to every authority whatsoever. Several letters were written, several complaints were laid officially and unofficially.
All right. How long were these complaints made? And to whom specifically, if you can give us? I know that Odon comes under the Lagos State Health Service Commission. Were there letters written to the commission? Were there letters written to the Chief Medical Director and then also the Facility Management Company? I'd like you to tell us who and how long this complaint had been and what the responses had been like. Then the second part of my question would be around the statement I had talked about in the opening, where the 1 hour Dr. Vwaere was trapped in the elevator, and from reports, she was still alive. And then when she was brought out, she was rushed. It was in a hospital facility. She was rushed into theater. There were issues around availability or non-availability of blood. The Lagos State government has said that's a non-issue, that there was blood available. But what really happened? Why could she have been saved?
All right, so the first question, who were these complaints meant to? So we have a facility manager who we have direct interfaces with within the building, and his name is Mr. Charles. He reports to someone else in the Health Service Commission. These letters, first of all, we directed these letters to the medical girl who is directly in charge of our welfare, who are, quote unquote, senior doctors who should be able to relate to our plight more easily. So several letters, official letters, were written by our HO reps, who are the House Officer representatives, to the medical girl. Letters were written directly to the CMD, the MD of General Hospital. The letters were written to HSC, so the Permanent Secretary. There's an entire long through this. So all of the bodies who are directly in charge of our facility, quote unquote, were written to repeatedly. What were the response we got? We always got the response of, oh, you'll be looking to, we are working on it. And there was a clear understanding that the lift is working. Aside from the fact that there was a light and water problem, we clearly stated that this lift is non-functional, and when it is functioning, it has glitches in it. The responses we kept on getting was, oh, the RISE facilities have received your complaint and something is being done about it.
How long was this complaint for?
I started working in HSC in 2021. As far back, I have seniors from Babcock University who worked there as early as 2019, and during their time, the lift was non-functional. So let's say from 2019, up until now, this has been a 4-5 years period of repeated complaint about these same elevators. And whenever these complaints were we got the response that the right people who can actually make a change were listening to you. But then, all of this revelation, this incident that happened, and the responses we are getting back, first of all, was that up until now, there's no clear body who is taking responsibility and say, we are directly in charge of the elevator in General Hospital, HSC. We are finding out that now there was no maintenance contract between the different bodies involved. So it just feels like we were speaking, but people who we're speaking to were not getting this complaint. We're not digging deep to really focus on who was directly accountable for this elevator. Your second question was...
The time she stayed in the elevator,
okay,
chances of survival.
Vwaere was still alive, very much alive when this crash happened. There was so much time to save Vwaere. So this crash happened, and immediately it happened, which I would then talk about a gap again in maintenance. So ideally in a structure that is 10 floors, there should be a direct contact. If something happened, we should be able to hold a particular company and say, please come down to General Hospital, there has been a problem. And we see a huge number of engineers come on ground and get into work. We see that the facility manager claimed to have made certain calls and no one was showing up at that time. Eventually, some people came from the company, which we are now aware is installed this lift, came to the place, and it was a back and forth. Oh, you could clearly see that they were not aware of the next steps. There was no, okay, if a lift crashes, this is what we are supposed to do, this is what we are supposed to do. There was an experience gap. So it was like they were trying to figure it out on the ground there. So Lagos Island Maternity is across the road from General Hospital. So there's a lift there as well. And I don't want to say funny thing is that lift has glitches as well. That is a lift where pregnant women get into. That's a lift where people from surgery are wheeled into. And during my time there were glitches from time to time. You get into the lift, it will stop on a particular floor. They'll have to put a plaster and say, oh, don't go to the 4th floor. There are things like this. So there's a lot of faults in this building. So engineers were called from that building. And so it wasn't as if one person was trying to figure it out. It was different people trying to figure it out. So there was a 40 minutes gap where Vwaere was still alive, was still stuck in this elevator. Bear in mind that during this time, members of General Hospital, clinical and personnel in General Hospital Odun had been informed that there had been a major incident, that our colleague was severely injured. You would expect that the response will be a full-blown emergency response. I know there are faults in our medical system. I know there's an infrastructure problem. However, we know how we respond to emergency, especially when it is one of us. And I'm not saying that no life matters. If there's an emergency, we go all out for anyone. Although we barely do not have the resources to, we know how we come together and make sure. Our colleague was there. This MD was aware that someone was grossly injured. We would expect that a full-blown mechanism, all the consultants were brought together, oxygen was put in place. It was possible to collect samples from Vwaere, even if, I want to believe it was possible to get samples while she was still there. Oxygen should have been right there by that elevator. A stretcher should have been right there. All mechanisms should have already been put in place. What we saw was that even up until when Vwaere was taken out and got into the emergency, we still had to be running around. Oh, get the oxygen. Oh, where is cannula? Oh, where is this one? There was no preparation. And if we are being honest with each other, which is the problem we are seeing now, the perception the Lagos State is putting out is that proper preparation was made. But eyewitnesses who were there can clearly say any day, anytime, the proper emergency response was not made for Vwaere. We could have saved her. Vwaere should be alive by today if there was proper preparation for her.
So a couple of things I'd like to ask, and sorry about the loss of your friend, very sobering. A couple of things I'd like to ask. What's the nature of the injury sustained? And secondly, I don't want this interview to dwell on the constant ineptitude and inefficiencies that we all know about. Can we also take our time to celebrate the sweet spirit of Vwaere, what she stood for as your friend? Maybe after the nature of injury, let's talk about Vwaere in person. Let's humanize Vwaere.
I know, so...
Because she was buried just yesterday?
Yes, she was literally yesterday. So there was a laceration to her forehead. So the lift has like glasses within. So when it crashed, like all of those were on her. So yeah, there was a laceration on her lips as well. They were fractures. There was an open tibiofibular fracture, although it wasn't bleeding massively. So she had like multiple fractures and also soft tissue injuries as well.
Yes.
Who was Vwaere? Vwaere is, so I feel like this is particularly hard for us because Vwaere was such a people person. So I can't stop. So I was the vice president in my medical association. So they'll call me, so it's Babcock University Student Association. So they'll call me Mommy Boams. And I can't stop hearing. So Vwaere will see me anywhere in school. And she will literally shout at the top of her voice. And she'll say, Mommy Boams. And she had the brightest smile. Like on a day when everyone was not interested in being a medical student or just unhappy, Vwaere will be smiling. So she was that light up the room kind of person. She went over and above for her patients, which is what is sickening to see her die in a facility she literally saved life in. Vwaere worked in LASEMS, this facility where she died in. She worked in LASEMS tirelessly. Like you could ask nurses or ask senior doctors and they knew her because of her passion for what she did. She came in later than her colleagues to start working in HSC, but she stood out. She was, she moved from just being a house officer to being the house officer. So we have people like CHOs, people that are in charge of other house officers, people that would delegate other house officers to units they would be. That was Vwaere. When everyone was done with their work and going back, Vwaere would stay back, check on that patients that were not even, things that she had no concern about. So you see someone who was in a system that did not work, but was making sure that she cared for patients to... She was an amazing person, an amazing sister, an amazing friend, and she would call you and she would check up on you, even on days where it was not convenient for, or she didn't even have to. She would go out of her, there are countless stories of house officers, maybe a patient doesn't have enough finances. Why will that person, oh, please, this patient doesn't have enough money. Let's come together and make sure they get their drugs. Let's come together and they make sure they get the care they need. And we just really wish that the same response was given to her when she actually needed help. Indeed,
it is a terrible thing that doctors who have been recruited to save lives are themselves put in the way of danger by a negligent Nigerian system. But I would like to ask you, what is the reaction among house officers, medical officers, to steps that have been taken after the fact by the Lagos State government? Suspension of the DG of the Lagos State Infrastructure Management Agency, handing over of the maintenance contractors to the police for further investigation, the sacking of the facility managers. I hope that Mr. Charles has been sacked too, along with the others. That's one. Then the second part, in other jurisdictions, this will qualify as a crime scene, and the place will have been cordoned off. So are doctors still living in that building? Are people still going in and out, carrying buckets of water from first floor to 12th floor? Or the building has been shut down completely? Are you still staying there?
Okay, so the first question is, what is the response of house officers? We are unsatisfied because we kind of know how this works. So a major incident happens and we are giving bogus statements that, oh, this person has been arrested or certain person has been blacklisted, but everyone knows Vwaere's name. And you tell us that a facility manager has been blacklisted and sacked. What are their names? When was this done? Where was this done? A friend died publicly. So why are, as you said, a crime has been committed. And let's not see it as in civil countries, this is what is supposed to be done. In Nigeria, this is what is supposed to be done. A crime was committed against our friend. And the response to a crime is that those who are responsible and have been found guilty should be prosecuted, and then the full course of the law be taken. And that is what we want to see in place. We don't want to hear that, oh, a GM was suspended. Who is the GM? What's their name? When was this done? Where are the documentation? Where are evidence? We can see the evidence where our friend died. Her blood is still stained all over the elevator. It's clear as day. And this is what we want to see. And we do not want the focus to only be on the installment company or certain people. There's something called a negligence that leads to harm, which is what we have seen played here. And there's a
strict liability, criminal tort.
Exactly. There's a part of our constitution that clearly names that if you're given a job and due to negligence or not doing your job to the full extent to which it's done, you are liable to face you're liable to face the law, and justice should be done. And that is what we want to see. So we are saying at every point in time, from the persons through which we make complaints to, who were aware that there was a resistance to their complaint and did nothing about it, but instead came back to give us promises that were never fulfilled. We are saying from top to bottom, so from the medical guild, from the CMD to the HSC, every person through which has received this complaint but need nothing should be tried because there has been negligence. You have a job, you have a responsibility. We're talking about over 140 house officers in a building. And 1 week, this is day 8, and you can't hold one person accountable. You're telling us you're blacklisting people. Blacklisting who? So what happens after they are blacklisted or suspended? Do we just sweep this under the carpet and move on with our life? That's not what we want to see. We want a full course of justice for every single person that is liable to this. So the entire spectrum of individuals I have collected, that's what we want to see. The second question.
Are you guys still in that building?
Okay.
Or they've cordoned off the place?
So there's an indefinite strike for all house officers working in General Hospital. Vwaere had just 2 weeks till she was done with her house job. So I know. She literally had 2 weeks to be done. So right now, every house, they can't go back. I don't know what they're going to do, but those 2 weeks, they would have to let it go and just sign those students off to give them their permanent licenses. it's a crime scene and it should be totally shut off. Right now, there's no house officer general hospital that is working. Most of them have gone home. Most of them have been dispersed to their different houses because it's traumatic to even be in that place. What we don't want to see is the building shut off and nothing is being done, or the renovations, or renovations come and renovations are done, but then we forget the justice part. What we are saying is that if you're going to renovate this building, you're going to be getting us justice as well. So we want all of it done, pari passu.
I believe there are many lessons that can be learned from this particular episode. And one of the ways in which we can truly honor Dr. Vwaere's life is to ensure that this doesn't happen again. And by doing that, if we're going to ensure that doesn't happen again, we need to look back and see. So one of the things you've said is that there ought to be consequences for all the individuals involved in this. Beyond that, I'd like you to use this opportunity to talk about the welfare or the way doctors, house officer doctors are treated, the conditions of living. I hear that when the permanent secretary, according to a source that was on ground, came there, he was saying that, he had mentioned that in his time, they didn't even have accommodation. So, you ought to be quite grateful that there's accommodation beyond that. What is the state of medical officers in training in Lagos State in particular at the moment? Because if Lagos State, which is the center of excellence, is in that condition, one can bear to imagine what happens in other parts of the country and how can we improve this. This is an opportunity for change. We should not miss it. And I hope that this would be a tribute to Dr. Vwaere's life.
Okay, so the general state of, it's like the 1 year of your life that you dread. And I speak for everyone who has worked somewhere. And this is Lagos State, which is supposed to be the center of excellence. And we're supposed to be like the prototype state. And when you think, anytime I'm literally having goosebumps remembering house job, it was the most depressive 1 year of my life. The conditions of living are horrible, horrible. This is 10-story building, and we moved from having light from about 18 hours to 16 hours to 8 hours to 6 hours. Right now, they are struggling. There was a time where these house officers were struggling to get light for barely 2 hours. These are people who are the first contact of care. So you're coming home and you should come home and just have that sleep that you wake up and feel refreshed and then go back to work. And then you can't have that because there's no light. And the building, it survives on light. So if there's no light, there's no water. And if there's no light, you can't cook because there are no gas cookers there. So you use the hot plates. So you have to order food from somewhere or buy food and eat it that day. So there's no lights, you have to carry buckets of water. There were times where we had to be paying people there to bring up waters because you're too fatigued and tired, and we're paying almost 2,000 naira for a bucket of water. This from the tiny salary that we are get paid. This is the salary you use for yourself and your family who expect you to be a doctor. So this is the condition of living. There's no water, you have to think about laundry, and then you get to work. And then there's the system that is grossly lacking basic infrastructure. And then I will chip in something. So there are monitors that you put on a patient immediately they come into the emergency, and they're supposed to read all of their vitals. When Vwaere got to LASEMS, they put one of those machines on her, and up until where she died, it couldn't read any of her vitals. This is the LASEMS of Lagos State General Hospital. And you have not one machine that can completely read the vitals of a patient. And this is everywhere, from the casualty to the LASEMS. So patients come in and then they look at us young doctors and it feels like, oh, we are being wicked, or why are they not attending to me? And then they go on Twitter and then they drag the doctors, oh, they are heartless. We are not heartless. We are working in a system that does not work. How can a carpenter make a table without wood and nail? That's what the healthcare system in Lagos is. We don't have the tools to help you. There are no gloves. If patient come in, even if it's an emergency, you have to wait for the family to buy hand gloves, to buy needles and syringe and cannula. So you would wait because what? You should touch a patient which you have no history about with your bare hands. There are doctors who have had HIV, hepatitis, funny diseases just because they didn't have the proper kits to protect themselves in the emergency. And then you have your senior colleague who are supposed to be understanding and helpful. So I don't know if it's a medical elders theory or if it's a general elders theory or if it was hard for us, you can't have it easy. Or hardship is the way to groom character. That is wrong. It's not done anywhere. It's not productive.
Dr. Joa?
Sorry.
Well, it's very frustrating hearing all of this. And considering the fact that health is a second major item in Governor Sanwo-Olu's agenda with the people of Lagos. And during the campaigns, we were told, the health sector in Lagos State is a sector of excellence. Only to hear all of this, that even the doctors who are supposed to save people have been so terribly neglected. Once again, our condolences.
Thank you very much.
With the soul of Dr. Diaso, rest in peace.